You are listening to Lesson 6, Chapter 1 of Form 4 African History. Cameroon General Education. Narrated by Wacheseh Academy. West African Nationalist and Decolonization Process, 1945-1960. Ghana. The sound liberal higher education provided by the Akimota College. The mission colleges increased awareness against colonialism. The presence of much Western-educated elite hostile to colonialism such as Dr. Dangwa, Dr. Kruma, etc., who intoxicated the people against colonialism. The rapid advancement of Gold Coast society increased their awareness consciousness and unity against colonialism. The formation of anti-colonial organization or forum which mobilized the people against colonial rule such as the UGCC led by Dangwa. The influence of newspapers such as the Accra Evening News of Kruma exposed the evils of colonialism. The improvement of roads, railway telephone, and postal services accelerated the spread of anti-colonial ideas. The trade boom enjoyed by farmers of cash crops during the war helped to fuel the flames of nationalism. The presence of ex-servicemen exposed the weaknesses of the British and provided courage against colonialism. Rural exodus which created congestion and deplorable living standards in towns while the British settlers lived in luxurious quarters, helped to fuel the flames of nationalism. The British colonial policy of indirect rule which excluded the elite from the colonial administration made them very hostile to colonialism. The scarcity of imported European products and rapid rise in their prices without an increase in the wages of Ghanaian workers encouraged the formation of trade unions that united workers against British colonialism. Ghanaians were unhappy with the British control and domination of the Executive Council by 1948. External. The war had exhausted the British economically. The priority of the British resources was for reconstruction rather than fighting against African nationalism. The rise of the Labour Party in Britain, sympathetic to decolonization, encouraged independent struggles. The help Ghanaians gave the British in the war influenced them to demand independence as compensation. The myth of British superiority was destroyed by the performance of the British soldiers in the battle in front of Ghanaians. The Atlantic Charter of 1941 gives people the right to live under a freely chosen government. The UNO was against colonialism, and that encouraged the Ghanaian against colonialism. The two superpowers also condemned colonialism, that is USA and USSR. The Pan-African Congress which took place in Manchester in 1945 condemned colonialism. The independence of Asian countries such as India and Pakistan from British rule also encouraged the independence struggle on the Gold Coast. The independence of other African states like Liberia, Ethiopia, Egypt motivated the struggle for independence. The activities of the National Congress of British West Africa and the West African Student Union which condemned colonialism and pressed for constitutional reforms encouraged them. How/stages/events leading to the independence of Gold Coast. The 1925 Constitution gave Africans 9 out of 30 seats in the Legislative Council. World War II increased the flames of nationalism. A new constitution was introduced in 1946 by Governor Burns which provided an African majority in the Legislative Council which provoked protest. In August 1947, Dr. Dangwa created the UGCC, and its motto was independence within the shortest possible time. In November 1947 Kruma arrived on the Gold Coast and became Secretary General of the UGCC. UGCC was recognized and made a mass party, supported by youth organizations and newspapers. In 1948, Kruma exploited the economic grievances of the people, caused by the felling down of millions of cocoa trees to check against the black pod diseases and organized anti-British nationwide strikes for better constructions. The British blamed Dangwa and Kruma for the riots, and they're arrested and detained in 1949. The British sent a commission of inquiry headed by Watson to make findings of the 1948 disturbances and recommendations. It recommended an African majority in the Legislative Assembly and an Executive Council with 5 African ministers. It recommended semi-internal self-government. An African committee under the chairmanship of Sir Henry Kusi studied the Watson report and published its report supporting most Watson recommendation. Kruma led the radicals of UGCC and described the report as an imperialist fraud because he wanted but immediate self-government, not the semi-internal self-government. In June 1949, Kruma broke away from the UGCC and created his own party called the Convention People's Party. CPP and motto were independence now. He promised to achieve it using positive actions, since most people were illiterates. In November 1949, the CPP held its first Congress and promised to undertake civil disobedience if more constructional reforms were not given towards independence. Failure to grant complete self-government led to a nationwide strike organized by CPP January 1950. Kruma was arrested and imprisoned. Meanwhile, elections took place under Wacheseh construction in 1951. Kruma CPP won 34 seats out of 38, and he was released from prison. In 1951, he became the leader of the government. In March 1952, Kruma was given the title of Prime Minister. New construction was introduced in 1954 called the Kruma Constitution, which has the government full responsibility for internal administration. The CPP won 71 seats out of 104. In 1956, the Independence Constitution was put to test, and the CPP won 72 out of 104 seats. In February 1957, the British Parliament passed the Ghana Independence Act. In March 1957, Gold Coast became independent. Role played by Kruma in the independence of Ghana. Returned to the Gold Coast with strong anti-colonial feelings and radicalism in November 1947. Served as Secretary General of UGCC and transformed it from an elite to a mass popular movement to achieve self-government within the shortest time possible, which was the motto of the party. Founded the Accra Evening News, which mobilized the people against British colonialism. Mobilized the youths against colonialism through the Committee for Youth organization he founded. Mobilized women and used them to entice men to join the anti-colonial struggle. Mounted economic pressure on the British to decolonize the territory through boycott of goods in 1948. He was strongly behind the 1984 riots. This successfully mobilized the people in general and the farmers in particular against colonialism. He protested against the moderate policies of UGCC, broke away in June 1949, and created his own party called CPP, whose motto was Independence Now. He denounced the Wacheseh proposal of an African majority in the Legislative Assembly as imperialists found and demanded immediate self-government. He organized anti-colonial disturbances in January 1950 to demand self-government. Although arrested and imprisoned in 1950, he continued to have secret contacts with the Secretary General of CPP, in the toilet using toilet roll, and that helped the party to win 34 out of 38 seats in the 1951 elections. Under him, Gold Coast achieved semi-internal self-government in 1951, and he became the leader of government business. In June 1952, Kruma demanded complete self-government when the British colonial secretary visited the country. In 1954, the territory achieved full internal self-government under the Kruma Constitution. Kruma led the CPP to win 71 out of 104 seats in the 1954 elections. Kruma stood for a unitary system of government on the attainment of independence, and won 72 out of 104 in 1956. In February 1957, Kruma successfully mounted pressure which influenced the British Parliament to pass the Ghana Independence Act, and in March 1957, Gold Coast achieved independence as Ghana. Reasons for the CPP of Kruma victory. Kruma broke away from the UGCC, taking most of its members. CPP was better organized, stood for the masses, while UGCC stood for the elite, who were very few. CPP motto was Independence Now, and was no popular than the UGCC, which was self-government within the shortest possible time. CPP penetrated all corners of the territory, while UGCC was mainly found in urban areas. CPP had support from trade unions, which enabled them to win the support of workers. CPP had penetrated the youths through youth organizations. CPP penetrated women and used them in parades in flamboyant dresses, singing charming songs, etc., which attracted many men. The executive of CPP had farmers, traders, veranda boys, university professors, unlike the UGCC, which was dominated by the elite who could not meet the people. The CPP strategy of denouncing the Wacheseh proposal and their demand for immediate self-government made them very popular. The CPP preached socialism, which gave peasants the impression that resources would be shared equally after independence, made them win a large following. Achievement of Kruma in domestic political gave Ghana political stability from 1957 to 66 through a strong presidential system. He established a strong central government and suppressed regionalism. He promoted national unity through a unitary system of government and a one-party system. He reconciled the North and South and the Asante and the rest of Ghana. Economic. He promoted agricultural development. The black pod diseases were checked, agriculture was modernized, and integration carried out in the drier north like Ganja Water Development Project. Ghana produced about 40% of the world's cocoa. The construction of the Akasambo Dam on the Volta River provided cheap hydroelectricity, which stimulated industrialization. Construction of modern roads such as the Accra-Tema Road eased movement. Construction of the Takoradi Port in Tema Harbor eased international trade. Gave Ghana one of the best telegraph systems in Africa, which eased communication. Social. Construction of many primary, secondary, and technical schools. He made primary education free and compulsory by 1961, and by 1963, school books were given free. Established many regional and district hospitals, as well as many specialized hospitals. Free medical facilities were provided. Constructed a magnificent statehouse and the Black Star Square, now Independence Square. Promoted sports under him. Ghana won many African trophies. In foreign affairs. Promotion of Pan-Africanism. Mobilization and unity of Africans abroad as the President of African Students' Union in the USA, Vice President of West African Students' Union in Britain. Served as one of the secretaries in the Pan-African Congress in Manchester. Organized the first Pan-African Conference in Africa, in Accra in April 1958, and invited the independent African states, and in December 1958, and invited the people of Africa. The adopted diplomatic bilateral approach towards African unity. He initiated the Ghana-Guinea Union, formed in 1958, and in 1960 the formation of the Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union as a step towards the Union of African States. Helped liberation movements in Africa in the struggle against colonialism. Assisted independent African states in the struggle against neo-colonialism, for example Guinea. Mobilized progressive African states to defend the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Congo. Promoted the independent African states' struggle against apartheid in South Africa. Led African states to condemn the French testing of the atomic bomb in Algerian Sahara. An active supporter of the Casablanca Group in 1961, which favored the creation of United Africa. Publication of books which increased the level of African awareness toward unity, such as Donation of African Champions Club Cup. Promotion of Union of African Trade Unions to fight against the exploitation of African workers. Promotion of unity among African journalists for better reporting of African issues. A strong advocate of the creation of an African High Command. Reasons for the overthrow of Kruma in February 1966. Unpopular socio-political. Hatred for his policy of imprisonment of suspects without trial. Hatred for his very poor treatment given to detainees. They slept on tarpaulin, fed them on water, gari and salt. Hatred for his adoption of a one-party state and suppression of political parties and associations. Destroyed parliamentary democracy and introduced the unpopular presidential system, which gave him unlimited powers ruled by decrees. Government interference in the judiciary, victimization of judges, especially the dismissal of the chief judge. He banned independent newspapers and openly victimized intellectuals who opposed him. He restricted freedom of speech and victimized critics. He diverted state resources to project his personality of a high-sounding title like Father of the Nation, Kruma of Africa, etc. Hatred for his concentration of power, such as the commander of the armed force, head of the magistracy, head of state and government, etc. He was involved in widespread corruption and favoritism, the preferential treatment given to his girlfriends, party officials, etc. Lost the support of the army and police. Favored presidential guards and allowed the army and police to dress in tattered uniforms with low wages, etc. The forced retirement of police and army. Unpopular foreign policy. Wasted lots of Ghana's resources on Pan-Africanism, hoping to become president of United Africa. Adopted pro-Russian policy, which annoyed the Western powers, and the CIA plotted his overthrow. Unpopular economic policy. Very extravagant, spent €6 million on the construction of Statehouse which had only ceremonial functions. Hatred for the misappropriation of state funds by party officials. Ghana had a national reserve of €200 million in 1957. By 1965, had a debt of €40 million. He plunged Ghana into a balance of payment deficit, and by 1965, the economic crisis aggravated. Hatred for the increase in taxes on clothes, vegetables, fish, etc., and other basic products. Socialist economic policy sent away Western investors, leading to high unemployment. The low salaries of united workers against him. Scarcity of basic products like milk and foodstuff united people against him.